Welcome to another episode of Bourbon and Rum. This is a podcast of two brothers from opposite ends of the spectrum. My name's Kent. I'm a rum drinker, and I'm from the left side of the aisle.
And I'm Kyle. I like bourbon, tend to be a little more conservative. Join us as we explore this experiment. Can two brothers from different sides of the political spectrum have a civil conversation and celebrate our differences?
What are you drinking?
I am drinking a Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel. This is out of the Heaven Hill Distillery, Elijah Craig. They take Elijah Craig small batch, and then they put it in a secondary barrel for, something like 3 or 4 months or something like that. And it's the toasted barrel. It sounds kind of stupid because, all bourbon is aged in charred barrels, but toasted barrel it's heated, but it's not really charred. It's almost like just kind of a light toast almost of an affair. And then they put it in there for a few months, and it kind of rounds out the edges. It's a little less, like some of the flavors are a little more muted, and it's got kind of a marshmallowy caramelized flavor. So yeah, really good. Several of the distilleries offer a toasted version, but yeah, it's pretty tasty.
That sounds really good, actually. Again, because my tipple of choice, pound for pound, usually is about a quarter of the price of what you're drinking. I am back on my beloved favorite cheap Cruzan rum, but for kicks, I tried a different one of their expressions. I'm kind of being self-deprecating. This is like legit rum. It's distilled on St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. The distillery's been there since 1760, so it's legit. But it's $15 a bottle. This is the hurricane proof aged rum. And it is bottled at 137.
Whoa, nice. A barrel proof rum. Yeah. There you go.
I'm not gonna lie. It's a little hot, but made into an old fashioned. It's kind of a bright flavor. I like it. It's honestly, it's a really high proof rum, but it's sippable.
Maybe when you come down here, I'll have to, we've got more selection. I need to buy up a few bottles for you to try here and review.
Our apologies to our faithful listeners who were on the edges of their chairs, and yet we missed a week this week. So that's my fault. We were out of town and weren't able to pull off a recording.
My fault. We had other social activities eating up our schedule, unfortunately.
Well, we've got lives. Anyway, sorry, folks. I hope we didn't have like unsubscribes because you had to wait the extra week. But and it is always fun. We were actually with a listener family last weekend, which was kind of fun. Getting a little lowdown, a little review, little commentary on where we're at, which is kind of interesting. I think you've talked to people that listen.
Yeah, we had a dinner on Friday with a few families, and several folks are like, "Yeah, we've been listening." Really? Why?
That is so fun, and we love hearing from you too. We've got a website. There's an email for the podcast, and so by all means, like if you're listening, let us know, and we welcome topics and ideas. That interaction with people that are listening has been one of the really gratifying things about this. So thank you to all of our fans.
Yeah, one of the guys mentioned that was a really nice compliment. He said, it's fun listening to people that are informed that debate, because he said, most of the stuff you watch on TV or whatever, people are debating, and a lot of times it's just raw emotion and not people kind of digging into the facts of both sides, which I wouldn't consider myself the most informed person in the world, but I do feel like, we try to explore the factual elements of stuff versus just, you know, I feel type of thing, which, there's some of that for sure, but
Yeah. One of the things that, and I certainly fall short from time to time, but one of the things that this whole exercise, this whole experiment has been really useful to me on it. I'm reminded of, I think it's the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, and kind of seek first to understand and then be understood. And it's like, honestly, Kyle, I hear you say things and I can listen to you and I can kind of pick apart what you're saying. Stuff that, like, if it was some Fox News talking head, I would never give it even the chance to listen to actually understand it. And so, and it really is, I think, a measure of mutual respect that I'm not just going to close down. I'm going to listen to what you say. I disagree with a lot of things you say, but it's an interesting indication that my respect for you presupposes me to be able to listen to what you're saying with a little bit opener ear. And I don't think we're doing that great in this country right now, but I think that's an important step.
well, and I mean, part of the reason why I like to listen to you isn't, I mean, partly it's my brother, but I try to think objectively. If I happen to land on MSNBC one day and I saw you, I'm not trying to impugn you by saying you'd be on MSNBC, but if I did wind up seeing you, I think objectively, the way you approach things is different too. It's not.
Mm,
Hopefully, I can do the same. Hopefully, like I said, we don't sound like we're Fox and MSNBC yelling at each other.
right, right. Well, it's been an eventful couple of weeks since we've talked. And, as we said in the last podcast, we want to make sure that we're, it's kind of that balance to strike between being timely and relevant, but also not just like,
Did you see that story? What about this
yeah,
story?
exactly. And so, we're going to continue to try to strike that balance a little bit. And again, I hope our viewers or listeners will give us some grace as we try to navigate that. We don't want to avoid contemporary issues, but we also don't want the agenda just to be whatever's the top line on the news feed right now. I do think it's kind of a moment, and I had to laugh about a couple of things that struck me, but one is, one of the primary knocks on the Biden administration, I think among the rank and file, were really, look, especially the second half of the Biden administration, there was really high inflation, and that hurt people a lot. And and so, like, what's wrong with America? This goes back to my thing before the election. Like, things are pretty good for me. I don't want mass disruption. I don't want to rock the boat too much. I'm fine with some incremental improvement, but I'm pretty happy with things. But it is true that the inflation rate over the past couple of years has rocked people. It has caused a lot of problems. People's incomes haven't kept up. It's raised a lot of issues. And one of the promises was, oh, Trump, he's a businessman. He knows how the economy works. He's going to fix that inflation problem for you. And not 3 weeks in, apparently, we are having a bit of a surge on prices right now. More than the fact of that, I kind of wanted to dig into, the public has a short memory. How do you frame things? There's a continuum, and the whole world doesn't just change when the next guy steps into the White House. But a lot of our political rhetoric acts as though, oh, yeah,
And and
inflation was a Biden problem.
and expectation management
Yeah.
too. Yeah, because I think if you're running on I'm going to combat inflation, I think there's certainly high expectations that you're going to have an impact. But then I think part of it too is defining what is that impact? Because I think it's quite possible that you reduce inflation, but you're not necessarily reducing the price. I mean, if somebody raised the price 3 times over the last 3 years, I'm just making this up. If prices went up 15% per year in the last 3 years, and they only go up 3% this year, Well, the goal of reducing inflation is a win, but reducing the cost of something that has gone up in value three times over the last 3 years, it's not going to go down in price, because anybody that's selling a product, I mean, unless you had have another pandemic or some other, substantial economic impact, the thought that things are going to come down in price is unrealistic. But to your point, that's kind of the platform is I'm going to reduce inflation. And I think a lot of people bring that into like, yeah, I'm going to reduce the cost. And I'm sure, the rhetoric on the campaign trail is like, yeah, we're going to reduce costs. And it's like, well, okay, you're gonna cut the cost in half, or are you gonna reduce inflation? Because those are kind of two different things.
Yeah. And from an economics perspective, you know, there isn't just one economy. There are several parallel economies that are working together on this. We are accustomed to really wide swings in energy prices, for example. And it is true that gas prices will spike and they'll come way back down, and you're all over the map with that.
Yeah,
One of the places that I think people have felt inflation most acutely over the last couple of years has been in restaurants. At least for me, that's a place that I see it a lot. And in that case, it was probably kind of driven by input costs or food product costs. But I think you've probably experienced this as much as I have. A lot of these restaurants, they had huge price pressures for a decade before this and could not increase their prices. And now all of a sudden, if I'm running a restaurant and the headline in the paper is like inflation's really bad, I'm looking around and I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to slap my prices up 20%. And I'm going to say, I'm sorry, we have to
yeah,
raise prices to keep up with everybody. And you saw this, it was kind of like all at once, at least in our town, all at once, all the restaurants, there's a sticker on every menu with new prices. And I don't know that that really correlates to what the cost of their food inputs was, but they realized that in some ways the news of inflation being high gave them air cover to raise their prices because then people are still going to come out.
yeah. No, it's a great point in that it depends on the product. I mean, there are certain things that are going to fluctuate significantly, based on economic factors like energy, like gasoline, oil, electricity, stuff like that. But then, I mean, if you've gone to the effort of um, bumping up your price on your menu to 13.99 for your quesadillas, yeah, quesadillas are 13.99. They're not coming down.
Exactly. Exactly. Nobody's like, good news, the cheese price went down. So we're going to slash those quesadilla prices. Yeah.
Now I will say, Kent. Now we could get into tariffs conversation, but I think my happiest outcome so far on the tariff threats, if it materializes, is Canada did a reciprocal tariff and removed bourbon from their shelves. Now, it's really hard to find allocated bourbon. Now, if Canada isn't going to accept bourbon anymore, what will that do to supply of allocated bourbon and possibly, I don't know about the price, but yeah.
yeah, of course, I don't know. Have to look at the analytics if we've got Canadian listeners. In general, I think that the Canadian market was probably not working at the high end of the. I mean, if there was a scarcity of George Dickel, it might be because of the Canadian play. But I mean, these are the people that brought us Seagram's VO.
Yeah. Well, and how about, okay, so another area under inflation to think about too, which is a dual-edged sword, is home prices. You
Mm.
want affordable, but if I'm selling my house, I love the fact the price of homes are going up, and that's one that, man, I thought we had some folks over for dinner Friday, and one of the guys is a realtor, and he's saying that it's getting back to, like, he's getting instances again where even with the interest rates being high, people are like, bidding wars on homes and stuff. So I thought that was interesting that even with I mean, there's a bit of a slowdown, but that appears to be healthy in that department. But like I said, depending on whether you're buying or selling, higher home prices is good or bad.
Yeah, homes are really interesting, kind of an anomaly in the whole thing because unlike bourbon, which is sort of you versus the distillery. Most home transactions are there's a consumer on both sides of that equation.
Yeah.
And so an individual is benefiting or suffering depending on the movement of things. So yeah, I think and then how much does the price of housing say about the supply of housing? And if you're in a stage of life where you're looking at your value going up and you're kind of feeling good about that, and then people are talking like, oh, we've got to lower the price of new construction. I'm like, oh, hold on.
Tap the brakes on that. Yeah.
Maybe we need to use these good older houses. And it's just interesting loyalties and where your situation points you on things. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I guess I do think back to this idea, like you campaign on one thing, you pick a really, my mantra always is that all of this stuff is complex, but there's no points for complexity in election rhetoric. And so it's like, Biden's president, inflation's high, he's the devil. But inflation didn't go away. And in fact, obviously prices didn't come down, but what was the story I read just the other day that not just that prices aren't coming down, that the inflation rate was up again
Interesting.
uh, considerably. And so, yeah. And how does that work when you said this is my claim to fame? This is why you should vote for me. How much runway do you get with that? How long can you wait to deliver on that?
Well, I do think part of it is also wrapped into what, yeah, there are specific outcomes that somebody said they're going to deliver, but there's also specific actions that somebody says they're going to deliver to impact the outcome. I think one of the challenges the Biden administration had and Kamala Harris had is they weren't able to really articulate, what are you going to do differently?
Right.
Then this raises another interesting conundrum because many of the things Trump said he was going to do economy wise, well, he's absolutely doing and attacking, like spending and these types of things. But what if you save a bunch of money and it doesn't impact, like what if your proposed action plan doesn't create the outcome that you want, but people voted for the action plan? So, you're back to your point of these complex situations. People vote for, I want this done and this done. Okay, let's go do these things. And then if it doesn't work, well, then what?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there is a reason why the relative little difference between administrations for Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden, and even Trump's first, there was a lot of noise, but there wasn't as much change maybe as people had banked on. One of the reasons that we don't have that kind of wholesale change is because it's kind of working. Not perfect, but it's kind of working. And I think it calls into question, do you want that big a change? These interventions could be, I mean, that's my whole fear about the tariffs. Selective use of tariffs to rebut things that specific foreign governments are doing in specific markets, sure. But blanket tariffs, and I think what you would say is that he never intended that it's a bargaining position. But even the threat of that can be difficult for us. And yeah,
Well, and this is where, I think okay, somebody who voted for these things and thinks that they're going to have benefit, they're not going to have benefit in 3 weeks. And so, you've got to be able to, look through what is going to be criticism for probably a couple of years of, well, this stuff isn't working. But I think it kind of gets back to, and the problem is, and to your point, I mean, these things are complex and you can't necessarily say this action created this. Like this action impacted this, but it was also impacted by these 10 other things. And that impact may not be realized until the date. And where I think, the hard part of campaigning is you're campaigning on short-term actions, relative short-term, within 4 years, actions and outcomes. But the outcomes often follow long after the actions, whether it be foreign policy, whether it be economic policy. But, at the end of his administration, if all these are still problems, but they resolve 8 months later, he's going to be a failure because he didn't deliver, even though, when you do all the math, well, maybe it did make a difference. But, and then same thing with Biden. I mean, okay, all this stuff he screwed up, but how much of this was screwed up from before, and whose
Well,
fault is what? And that's hard to decipher.
well, that's exactly what I was going to say. You acknowledge that, these interventions that you voted for that he's bringing might have a couple of years before it actually shows up. I could make the case. It is complex, so I can't say that this is the whole story, but the big inflationary spike under Biden, if you look back about 24 months before that really heated up, Trump was president and we were shoveling money out the door for COVID. Well, the most inflationary thing that you can possibly do is heavy deficit government spending. And within that universe, the most inflationary thing that you can do if you're going to spend money in a short term, couple of year long spin up the inflation business is give the money directly to people. And this is exactly what we did, right? We didn't, the COVID spending wasn't all like, oh, we'll help big businesses make capital invested. No, we were subsidizing unemployed workers, like writing checks to people, and then you're surprised that a couple of years later that you have inflation. I mean, I guess that's what I'm saying.
Well,
I would make the case that that was the biggest single movement that led to the inflation.
but the two spikes in federal spending were the first 2 years of the Biden administration. That was an enormous spike over the previous.
How much was the spending on the PPP under Trump?
Fiscal year 21 was a $2.8 trillion deficit. 22 is 1 point, and both of those driven COVID.
Yeah.
But I don't disagree. I'm not trying to no, you're wrong. Like, because I agree with you. I agree that these things are complex. So yeah, not trying to
Just thinking, you're
shoot that
dumping
down.
barrels full of money into the economy, and that happened. That started under Trump. It continued under Biden. Right? Biden didn't say
Right.
like, "Oh, we have to rein in spending,"
Right.
but in that period of time, and was it the wrong thing to do? I would say it was the right thing to do.
Well,
And
like
you kind of had to
go
know you were going to have that inflation. And it's just the price you pay.
well, and it's kind of like go back to I'm getting my years mixed up, but like at the end of the Bush administration, he dumped a bunch of money in the auto industry. That was like right at the 2008
Yeah.
recession. So, you kind of had a similar thing where Bush is dumping money in the economy. Obama's doing the same. Well, but you're in that period where like, well, what the hell else are you going to do?
Well, exactly. Like, even if you said that it was 100% Trump spending on the PPP and the other COVID measures that led 2 years later to this rampant inflation, and it was a 1-to-1, I would still say it was the right thing to do. Because what we didn't have in 2000 was bread lines.
Yeah.
And so, but if you're going to do that, you pay for it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's this egg thing is really fascinating. So that is, I guess the big thing is all these, and you talk again about timing. The bird flu outbreak was 2022, early 2022, mid 22. All these chickens start dying. Well, 2
Being
years later.
euthanized, actually. They actually, not to be too graphic, but to prevent the spread of bird flu, we raise a lot of eggs in Iowa, and to prevent the spread of bird flu, they would just like euthanize whole flocks.
Wow.
Turkeys too. We do more turkeys than chickens.
Asking, I wonder how many were euthanized. I mean, it was a big chunk, it sounds like.
Yeah.
156 million birds. So it's estimated that 40% of the egg laying hen population has been euthanized. Wow. I mean, honestly, it's kind of surprising. Eggs are only up $1.50 a dozen. I
Exactly.
mean,
Exactly.
gosh,
But it just goes to show the folly. Look, I mean, I'm willing to make the jokes. I almost posted to Facebook the other day. I was fixing eggs and I was like, oh, I'll call these Trump caviar that I'm having for breakfast. Uh, like I'll play the game, but look, it is not Donald Trump's fault 3 weeks in that eggs are through the roof. But you live by the sword, you die by the sword, and we've
yeah,
all become accustomed to these politicians acting like economic decisions were made 4 days ago, and that's why your eggs are expensive. Well,
yeah,
that's the game you play. Then you're going to pay a price for that.
yeah. I didn't see a executive order yet on hen procreation, but that seems like something that might be needed.
Well, you're the family values party. I guess the poultry families are families too, I suppose.
That's right. That's right. It's interesting to think about though. Like, okay, that happened 22, 23. It's not like there's 2 years worth of inventory on eggs. Like, a dumb question. Why does it? You would think the price would be a lot more elastic.
So I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I may be a little bit wrong on this, but so 40% of the laying hens were euthanized. Your retail eggs at the store are probably, this would be a good trivia question. What percentage of the market of eggs nationwide are sold as raw eggs in supermarkets? Because, you know, the Hostess Twinkie bakeries using eggs.
Oh yeah,
There's a whole lot of egg product that's dehydrated and that's used in commercial processes. And a lot of that stuff there was inventory of. And so that's going to buffer that a little bit.
well, here you go, Kent. According to data from the American Egg Board in 2022, approximately 56% of all shell eggs were distributed through retail outlets. 29.3% of shell eggs were sent to breaker plants where they're processed into liquid, frozen, or dried egg products for use in food service, manufacturing, other industries. And another 3.7% are exported.
26% to breaker plants. Tell me that wouldn't be an
29.
interesting job. What do you do? I, I break eggs all day
Man,
long. You just cracking them.
I worked with a guy one time that grew up working at chicken plants, and he
Mm.
won't eat. I mean, he's 50 years old. He won't eat chicken. He's like, it is. I mean, it sounds. There is a lot of what goes into our everyday world that if you knew how it was produced, it's like the hot dog thing, but it's yeah,
Totally, totally. So he's all pork.
yeah, yeah. Is that better?
Feeling a lot better about that. On our vacation, we visited the South, and I got to indulge in one of the great guilty pleasures of my life that only happens south of the state of Missouri. We had breakfast at Waffle House, which I love. But Waffle House is doing a 50 cent per egg surcharge right now.
Wow. I it's funny. I went to Waffle House here a few weeks ago. I was in North Carolina and was visiting with a guy there from Indiana. And I guess they don't have Waffle House in Indiana. I did not realize that, but
I think there's a few in southern Indiana, like Jeffersonville, but
so he was hot to
strictly
get
speaking.
get to one and yeah, it seemed like that was a lot better food when I was 21 years old and drunk, but
I have a soft spot for the hash browns. I really do. But
well, but
we
they've gone overboard. I mean, when we were kids, it was scattered, smothered, covered. Now there's like chunk, top, diced, buttoned. I mean,
there's a
that
guy on YouTube who did the permutations. I think there's 9 different additions to the Waffle House hash browns, and I will show my own math limits here, but I think it's you multiply out the factorial of 9, and there's something like 500 potential combinations that you can have.
that's great. Try to succumb. So there's officially, I mean, this we're getting a little dirty, but there's officially 8 standard toppings: smothered, covered, chunked, diced, peppered, capped, topped, and then country with country gravy.
Is the chili on that list? Can't you get chili on them?
Yeah, that's topped.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's after the math, it's 768 total count.
Well, the more you know.
That's
Uh,
right. Yeah, we aim to inform here. That friend of mine that a couple of informed people debating. Well, we're informed about Waffle House, but I don't know about what else.
if the Waffle House social media peer-to-peer marketing department uh, web bots are listening to this podcast at any point, we are currently not sponsored by any counter service
Yeah.
waffle restaurant chains, and I think we'd be glad to be the official political podcast of the Waffle House chain.
We're all in on that note. Um, speaking of restaurants though, and your thing about, the prices aren't coming down, man, I tell you one that you really see. I took some clients out to dinner this week at like a prime steakhouse. Those places, now those places have made out well with inflation because, like a 22-ounce ribeye is $100. I mean, that was, not that long ago was 50 something.
Yeah,
And, I think there's inflation around what you have to charge to make money. And I don't begrudge any restaurant. Like, hey, if you're a restaurant and you can get it, charge it. I mean,
totally.
knock yourself out. But I do think you get into the premium markets and somebody's like, well, crap, the ribeye went up from 90 to 100. I'm no longer eating there. Like, no,
No.
they're going to pay the $100.
There's a concept in classical economics called I think it's pronounced Veblen goods, Veblen goods. And those are products that apparently don't obey the normal rules of supply and demand. And what it usually is it's luxury or premium goods that, I mean, honestly, when you take clients to a prime steakhouse in a business context, we've both compared tabs for people that we've entertained for work, and had a little healthy competition to see who could drop more. But the way that game is played, this is not for the most part you and your family going out for a Valentine's dinner. This is you're taking business clients there. Your whole purpose is to impress a little bit. And actually, for you on a corporate card, the fact that that steak's $100 maybe makes it even more valuable to you than when it was $50. You're able to show off a little bit more. And so there is an element to this where, like, especially in a time when other prices are moving, that you're going to see exactly that kind of movement. And people are going to be like, yeah, well, if you have to ask how much that steak costs, well, you're maybe not as successful as I thought you were.
Fascinating call out. Yeah. Economist Thorsten Veblen introduced the concept of conspicuous consumption, where people buy expensive goods to signal wealth and status. And it's where demand actually increases as the price rises. So you're thinking high end watches and cars, and says that the goods often create FOMO among wealthy customers. Like, no, I got to have that too. And that's very true.
I remember the first time, I mean, this is many years ago, first time I ever saw a Mercedes G-Wagon. And I was with somebody and one drove by and the guy was like, those are over 100 grand. And that's what he said to me. He did not say it's got four-wheel drive, it's got a V6, it can drive up cliffs or anything. He points to the car and says, those are over 100 grand. The
Okay.
price tag is the feature of this car.
Well, and I don't know if it's inflation, but a G Wagon now is north of 250.
Yeah. I mean, this shows you how long ago this was that I was looking at. Seriously, 250?
And if you pull up in the back of it, it looks conspicuously like a Jeep Wrangler from the back of it.
And I can assure you that my Jeep Wrangler it did not cost me $250,000. And I'd be willing to bet that I could outdrive your G-Wagon driver, not maybe because my vehicle's inherently more capable, but because I've spent more time driving off-road than the clown who bought the G-Wagon for $250,000.
Well, now if you get the the Jig-Wagon, the AMG 63, you can get 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds. So you've got that going. In case you're going down the dirt road and you got to get to 60 miles an hour in 4 seconds, you're good.
You can get from 0 to 60 to slightly turning to one side and rolling the thing for the second quarter of a mile.
That's right. That's right.
I do not want to do high speeds in my Wrangler.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we've talked about we've talked about houses, we've talked about expensive goods, our own lives. Who is really getting killed by inflation?
Um, I mean, I don't want to claim to be knowledgeable on this. What I've heard and what makes sense to me, that kind of core household inflation kind of stuff has been particularly bad. And we're
Yeah.
talking about eggs, but grocery bills in general are a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Low income folks that, that's a big
yeah,
chunk of your
and
expenses.
and what I feel, one of the things that, I mean, this is going to be my bleeding heart coming out, but I'll tell you, one of the things that I really worry about with that is the nature of the food economy in this country is that the healthiest stuff for you costs the most. The heirloom tomatoes at Whole Foods versus the no name canned tomatoes that a lot of people, right? Like,
Yeah,
we pay a huge premium for healthy quality food. And when there are times of inflation and pressure like this gets worse. It's likely over a longer period of time to increase child obesity, increase diabetes, increase other bad health outcomes that then we pay for down the road. I have no solution to that. I don't know that, you know, I don't know, can you use your EBT card at the what's that the chain in your town with the is it country market or county market or what's the
Central Market.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you right like and chances are that stuff hasn't inflated percentage wise like some of the core stuff that people really rely on.
You talk to people that live in, I was talking to, I was talking to somebody that worked for one of the dollar, I can't remember, there's Dollar Tree and Dollar General. I think it's Dollar General that does groceries
Mm,
in rural areas. And it was somebody working for like corporate Dollar General. And, one of the big dilemmas in these small towns is, a lot of these small towns, the only store is the Dollar General or Dollar Tree.
totally.
And, they've tried rolling out grocery, like fresh stuff, but, you got a limited population. And if you're having to throw away all the stuff because it doesn't sell, it's really hard to make it economically feasible to have like fresh vegetables and fresh meat and stuff. Like you said, these people are eating canned stuff that's much worse for you, but they're living in a region that you can't get them the good stuff economically. It really is a challenge.
Right, and I can't afford to drive a half an hour to some other place. Actually, this is an interesting thing. I think I know this. I think I could find this in the news. I happen to know this because I know this. But in our state, there was a family that won the lottery. They won a big jackpot. And one of the first things that they did, they lived in a relatively small town, kind of a rural place that was kind of one of these, one of these food deserts where the places that you were able to get food in the town was if the Dollar General had some, you know, shelf stable stuff or the Casey's gas station, you could get a loaf of bread there or something. They created from scratch and built and funded a small, legitimate grocery store in their town. And they did so because they looked around and said, this is a problem that people really have. We want to do this. And so it was, I mean, they started as a business, but it was almost philanthropic in the way that they did it because they were addressing that food desert thing in their town.
Yeah. Well, I'll go on record. My proposed social program I want Trump to take up is free GLP-1 injections for the populace. I mean, seriously. I mean, Because you eat the canned crap, it's not good for you. But if you ate it in low amounts, you'd be okay.
Right, right. Well, yeah, and I think that we're going to find that the story of these GLP-1s, it is still a lot of stigma associated with it, which I think is crazy because what you really have is in some ways it is an antidote for the like truly awful industrialized food that we feed ourselves. And I'm the first, first among sinners on this, but like the great thing is that there's ample food everywhere that you go. The bad news is that it's all loaded with preservatives, it's hyper processed, and even if the food itself isn't, I'm not sure I buy that overprocessed food is inherently like poisonous, like people sometimes portray it. But insofar as you're eating that rather than eating fresh vegetables and fruits, or yeah, I think it's a huge problem. And
Yeah.
so in that sense, I think the GLP-1 does is it kind of rolls back the clock on the literal like bad habit addictions that we've been served up with the foods that we've been sold.
Well, Bush started it. George Sr. started the pyramid, which is a lot of people claim is what has really exacerbated the and that core tenets of it were in place well before that, but that was the base is the breads, grains, cereal, pasta. Eat as much of that as you want, but then some fruits and vegetables, and then a few fats and
Well, when I was a
oils.
kid, it was the four food groups.
Oh
It
yeah,
was like a fourth was fruits and vegetables, then meat was a fourth, then breads and carbohydrates was a fourth, and then fats and oils was a fourth. Nuts and cheese and, you know,
yeah. I mean,
crazy.
well, and you talk about. I mean, there's obviously a lot of conspiracy theories around like the corn industry and
Hmm.
how much they've influenced politics, food policy, and everything else, and how bad it is. All the corn syrup and based product.
That actually is a rabbit hole to go down because that's totally a thing. I
Yeah,
completely believe that. But the craziest part of it is that one of the reasons that we have that corn industrial complex or whatever you want to call it, agriculture and agricultural production in this country is one of the most government influenced and politicized segments of the economy that we have.
yeah,
And subsidies for growing things, subsidies for not growing things, incentives around that. And look, I want to be clear that I don't hold any animosity towards farmers who make rational decisions to work in that. But wow, the government is all over that. And you could argue that, for good reason, that we protect, it's a strategic asset to our country that we're able to feed ourselves and then much of the world in addition. Like that's a really valuable thing. But government subsidies for agriculture raise the value, the economic value of farm ground.
yeah,
And so the good news is we're going to help support the process of growing your corn and soybeans. But the bad news is because we're supporting that, we're making the land more valuable. And now we have this problem, and it's a huge problem in this country. I live in a very agricultural state, but if your family was a farm family and you want to go into it, the bare minimum for a farm that you can even kind of be in business on is millions of dollars for the
yeah,
land. And one of the things that's happening is that the land is not, I'm generalizing, certainly there's a lot of family farms that own their ground, but a lot of the farmland in really high value farmland states, the underlying ownership of the land is wealthy investors. You hear of
Bill
things like
Gates.
Bill
Yeah.
Gates and honestly, if you're a billionaire and your portfolio doesn't have a lot of farm ground in it, your advisor's probably doesn't know what he's doing. It's called real estate for a reason. It's a really valuable product. And the cost of agricultural ground has gone through the roof, which again is great if you're a billionaire and you're owning it as part of an alternative investment. But if you're a family farm and you're trying to hand it down to the next generation, that's really difficult. And all of this is related to farm policy, the farm bill, subsidies that we have. Who does that really benefit then? Your farmers everybody gets the subsidies, everybody's boat's raised. So it's one of those cases where your inflation, you're just changing the number. The basic economy of it doesn't change. It looks like a lot of money that I'm selling it for, but I'm paying more in ground rent to to grow the ground. So
Right.
like I'm not clearing anything. Who's really benefiting? It's the landowners. That is not necessary. You know, we have this vision of the yeoman farmer scratching out a living on their land, and that's certainly true. And there's certainly farm families that bring a lot to the country, but a lot of that ground is being snapped up by rich investors. And when farm policy raises crop prices and raises cost per acre of the land, the beneficiary is that owner who's sitting on a big tranche of land as an investment.
So, trivia question: who do you think is the largest? What individual or family is the largest private landowner in the U.S.?
I mean, you mentioned Bill Gates. I would think Warren Buffett owns a lot of ground. I wonder if Larry Ellison owns a lot of ground. I don't know.
I'd never heard of them. The Emerson family.
No idea.
I guess a lot of it's Pacific Northwest
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
2.4 million acres. Bill Gates only owns 275,000. Other large ones include John Malone, media mogul, with 2.2, and Ted Turner's.
I knew Ted Turner had a lot. Simplot, are they on that list anywhere?
Not in the top couple. You know, the other ones or other countries, and this is interesting. Canada owns 13 million acres.
Of U.S. ground?
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, maybe we'll be like the ninth province rather than them being the. I don't know how many
Hey,
provinces there are. I get my
I
numbers wrong.
I saw the Netherlands offered to buy California. I thought that'd be a great trade for Greenland.
No, no. If we're bringing Canada and I'm cutting every one of those provinces into three U.S. states because all of the Canadians have their head on straight and would vote party line with my team.
Well, then it's going to screw up my whole bourbon theory too. So crap.
We're kind of running out of time. I didn't want to skip over things. Maybe a future episode. I really would like to dive into Ukraine a little bit
Yeah,
and what that means. I think there's a lot of noise going on right now, but some of the realities are hard realities that we're going to be regardless of who was in the White House. So, I mean, there's some of that
I
clearly,
kind of I kind of feel like it's going down the path a bit of our prediction pre-election.
and and that
Not to,
was
not to take credit, us taking credit, but that there'd be some type of negotiated settlement. I mean, it certainly
yeah,
appeared to be the game plan, but
yeah.
um, it's kind of one of those things. It's like you don't want to wave the white flag and or have any type. You want to be like fight to the death, but at some point you got to kind of define what are you gaining. Is there a
Well, your TV host SecDef got ripped pretty hard for saying, I can't remember what he specifically said, but the idea of he used a label, and I couldn't remember what he meant. Like Ukraine to its original borders, like the original borders, Ukraine had all of the Crimea, and like
well, he said
that's
they're not.
not.
You're not going to get that, and I don't.
No,
I think
no. And I don't know if
that's
that's what he was
well
talking
known.
about or if he was talking about roughly status quo with the border right now. And I'm not very educated on Ukraine. What do they call that? Is it Donbass, that eastern
Yeah.
region?
No, my take is he was saying, yeah, you're not getting Crimea back, and I think that's pretty much
Yeah. I mean,
most
that
people are on
that
board with that.
the war would have to change significantly
Right.
before they were going to go get Crimea.
Yeah,
But
I think that I don't know. It seems like what's being said is probably reality, but people don't want to hear reality.
I don't know. I blow hot and cold on this because I'm going to say what I say, and it sounds a little flimsy when I say it. But do you want us to be the one that's out there saying, "Yeah, this"? I feel like it's the third quarter, and we're like, "Yeah, we can't pull that out. We need to." It's if indeed what he meant was we're not going to get Crimea back to Ukraine, then he's right, right? Like that's true. I still sort of think you want the U.S. to be, I don't know. It does feel like the white flag to me. I know what you mean. It's a complicated issue. You're probably not going to be able to support Ukraine to a degree that they're going to win the war.
It seems like if we were there fighting, it'd be like, no, screw it. We're gonna we're gonna take it all back and screw you. Um, I mean, honestly, this war is one that it seems like we actually have the power to start to end or continue. And it's like, okay, it's number one. I mean, this sounds brutal, but I mean, it's not our land.
Right.
We're not fighting for our territory. I think we're looking at this like humanitarian. Like, do we need to have hundreds of thousands of more people dead on both sides for what?
Well, I know what you mean, and I'm gonna jump in on the side of unpopular opinion here, and I'm just gonna say, yeah, of course, hundreds of thousands of people dying is an inherently bad thing, right? Stipulated. But the Russians, who are the arguably among the top two threats to global security right now, are the ones dying at a rate probably 4x or 5x to what the Ukrainians are dying.
Maybe,
Maybe.
hopefully,
Oh,
hopefully.
well,
Yeah,
yeah.
maybe.
But I'm just saying, like, I mean, if you can put the heartless geopolitical hat on, is it's a bad thing for anybody to die. I'm not trying to be trivial about this, but the country that's been the most bellicose on the entire world stage in recent years is losing its fighting ability at a precipitous rate. Are we in a hurry to end that? And why are we in a hurry to end that? Other than from a humanitarian
Other than we
standpoint, I
don't want to
get you.
see a million more people die.
Well, I get that. I get that. Gosh, I don't even know how to say this that it doesn't sound like I'm a heartless bastard, but like, I don't know. You got North Korean troops dying in this feudal war now. People dying's a bad thing. If people are going to die, I would prefer that preferentially was killing people who have overtly threatened to start other wars.
Yeah.
I, I don't
Well,
know.
except, I mean, I guess my view is the the kids that died in Russia, the million kids or whatever. I mean, it's because they got a dipshit asshole running the country.
Right.
And now, I know we go around and round about like, the people are responsible certainly for their leadership. And sorry for my bad language, but I hopefully nobody's offended that I'm trashing Vladimir Putin. But like, it's like the guy is promulgating this. How much are we creating this meat grinder to kill people on behalf of a despot? I don't know. I mean,
Right.
it's a
No,
weird deal.
you're totally right. And this is why it's such a moral quandary to me. And part of me says, look, less war is better. 100%. Stopping people dying, 100%. I think I think what I've come around on in this that this has already been so expensive in blood and treasure for the Russians. I read a commentator this week that said, Putin's got no way out of this. He's gone all in. He if he can claim a negotiated settlement and I took him to the bargaining table and I forced him, if he can claim some kind of
Yeah.
victory and end the war, fine. Then fewer people die, right? I get that. I do think that it's probably been costly enough now that it's impeded Russia's ability and almost certainly their willingness to point that same kind of effort at Latvia or right, like maybe you know maybe it has been bad enough already to retard their ability to fight and make war such that that is an objective that that to me that is the only objective that really has warranted the investment that we've done in terms of material that we put into the war. So maybe that's the case, and if so, if they've had it bad enough that they're not going to try this again, and we can stop it now and fewer people die, then I'm all for that. But if in World War II we'd have been on the banks of the Rhine and said, we've been fighting for 4 years. I don't want anybody else to die. We'll just make a little deal. Hitler, you stay here in Germany and we'll stay over here and we'll all call it good. I don't think that would have been the right move. I don't know if that's what we're at right now, but I worry about that.
Well, but the part I struggle with is if the position is the absolutist, like respect Ukraine's borders. I mean, it's back to that Crimea issue. that's already, I mean, like that issue's already passed and sailed. Like
Right.
like 10 years ago, 11 years ago, we decided as a country, like, yeah, they can have Ukraine or they can have Crimea. And like nobody's, and I know Hegseth may have pissed people off by saying that, but I don't think anybody is like advocating for going and rooting out Russia out of Crimea. So then it becomes,
Right.
well, what about these little eastern Ukraine provinces that are half Russian anyway? I mean, I'm not arguing for Putin, but like if that's the hill you're going to die on, why aren't you dying on the hill of Crimea too?
Right. No, that's a very valid point. 100% agree. I I don't know. It's a hard thing, and it's even hard for me to reconcile. I'm saying out loud, like this war, if they're not losing territory, Russia's losing capability. Every day this goes on, their
I mean,
capability to make war is going down.
if somebody's Ukrainian, I'm probably blasphemous for saying this, and I have deep love for Ukraine. I've went there 4 times and really loved the country. I was working on some stuff there for work, and I think the world of the place. But that the ownership of some of those far eastern provinces has been a bit under
True.
debate for the last 10 years.
Right.
Not debate. I mean, if I'm a Ukrainian, I'm like, no, this is BS. This is ours. But this conflict has existed. I just
So if
you
we
know
gave Texas back to Mexico,
Well, I think we just actually just let Texas secede. I think is the game plan. But yeah, and then we'll buy Mexico.
if you guys want to succeed, you take your electoral votes. We'll just we'll just call you our neighbor to the south of Oklahoma, and yeah.
Migration might increase,
Well,
but
obviously a
I yeah.
complicated topic with Ukraine, and gosh, I don't want what I've said to sound heartless at all. I just, gosh, like, okay, now it's time for negotiated peace.
Well, I think the negotiated peace could have happened 3 years ago, but that's a whole
Well,
other.
maybe so. Maybe
Well,
so.
but it is an interesting rabbit hole to go down, the twisting paths of political ideologies, because in many cases, the Democrat Party is now the war hawks versus the Republicans are not, and that's a massive
Well, and
change.
your unelected budget cutter, whose
Now,
citizenship is a question, uh, is going to cut the Defense Department too, which I thought, well, there we
the
go.
the unelected budget cutter of the unelected administrative bureaucrats who are pissing away all the money. That's yes, that's what you're referring to exactly.
I do have to say, I was pleased that they tippled the sacred cow and were willing to talk about good for the goose, good for the gander. Like I said, I saw somebody say though.
On the
I
defense
mean,
piece, you mean? Or
yeah, willing
yeah, yeah.
willing to talk about cutting defense.
Well,
Although I heard somebody say, I don't know, there's a sizable percentage of our enlisted troops that are on food stamps right now. And honestly, if you just cut the defense budget, what you're probably going to do is just move more of your enlisted troops into poverty and keep buying aircraft carriers. And unless and until we have reform at the top, this is a whole other episode. My final point here is going to be that you could check the data on this. What percentage, what multiple of the next highest defense budget on the planet is our military? So I assume China's the next highest expenses, and we're probably 3x what they spend.
yeah, if we get an actual
If cutting 10% from a budget that size
China,
actually,
yeah, you're good, Kent. 3.1. China's 296 billion. U.S. is 916. Now the only thing is there's probably 500 billion of slave labor baked into the Chinese budget, but
they,
other
they
than that,
do get they get that inherent discount. Uh, but I mean, seriously, if you say to me that with a budget that size, 3 times the next highest budget on the planet, if we couldn't cut 10% from our military budget without jeopardizing the safety of the country, then the people that are in charge of it are incompetent.
yeah,
If you can't say, you know what, we're going to go with 80 new F-35s rather than 120. And they might as well just open the borders and let the Chinese run in here because we've only got 80 F-35s. It's just preposterous.
Well, and I mean the F-15 Strike Eagle can beat any other. Well, the Strike Eagle is an air-to-ground fighter, but even an older model F-15 can take anybody air to air. F-35 throughout its life cycle has cost $2 trillion. I mean, it's madness. And
well, that one crashed a little while ago. I think the pilot survived. He ejected, but that was a bad day at the office. What did that cost us? Like $1 billion or something.
My big thing, the idiocy around like the B-21 is going to cost $800 billion, and it's a manned bomber. Like, what the hell were you thinking? I mean, we need a pilot to fly 36 hours to Baghdad. I mean, we can't do that without a pilotless aircraft. It's just crazy.
Your ejection seat, where the ejection would be over either Iranian desert or the ocean, that ejector seat weighs as much as yet another bomb that you could put on the unmanned aircraft.
A guy I went to school with was B-2 pilot for his career, and B-2 is $2 billion a copy. It's two-seater, and they fly to Whiteman Air Force Base, and they would fly these 35, 36-hour missions, dropping bombs in Baghdad, coming back. I mean, they're refueling the whole way, but because the cost of bedding those down at another base and logistics costs is just enormous. So they just do these massive flights. And this is no kidding. There was a space behind the pilot's seats. They would buy a Chase Lounge at Walmart for $15, and they put it in that space. And that's where they would take turns sleeping for 36 hours. Like, you spent $2 billion. You couldn't put a freaking cot back there. I mean, it's been great.
It sure has. Always good to talk to you. This has been fun, interesting stuff, and
good
talking to you. Hey, thanks for joining us on this episode of Bourbon and Rum Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us keep the good spirits flowing.
And we invite you to join this conversation. Follow us on our Facebook page. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear.
And until next time, cheers.